There was an interim period, Martin, between Ralph Hasenhüttl going and Nathan Jones coming in. When Nathan Jones joined the football club, eyebrows were raised a bit, particularly after he said this.
I've compromised in terms of certain principles because of one, personnel, but two, the way that people want to play and so on, and I've compromised because fans and so on. Compromised on a few little things, to be honest with you, but no more. Because at the end of the day, I've been very successful, and I've been very successful playing a real fluent style, and then tried to implement that at Stoke, and it didn't because of certain things. Then I came back to Luton. We were a real aggressive, front-footed side. Statistically, there weren't many better than me around Europe in terms for aggression, clean sheets, defending your box, balls in the box, XG, all those things. We were pound for pound the best because we were spending next to nothing and producing so much. And I've gone away from that because maybe it's Premier League, because of how things look, because of certain players and internationals and stuff like that. But no more, because at the end of the day, I've had to compromise certain things, and I'm not doing that again.
So compromise. Nathan Jones. What was the thinking behind bringing him in?
Yeah, and I think as we talked about before, there's always a plan and there's always people thinking things through. So you can be criticised for making a mistake, but it's not like people make it up. So I think the view was that we've been playing a certain way for a long period of time and doing the same things, and it wasn't working, and they wanted something that was different. I think when Nathan talks about, the data and the science behind his stats, that is true. We did all that work, and he was in the top 5 managers in Europe for improving teams and transitions and all these different things. So there was lots of logic behind it. So I think it was about changing the way we played, having an impact, trying to get the players on sides. They had a very good reputation for working with players and having a good relationship, and I think our players had kind of fallen out of love with what we were doing. I think the difficult bit in football is about this, again, with having this plan, having the right people at the right time. And I always said that I thought I did a pretty good job in a smaller club that was building and growing. I do a terrible job at Man United, in my opinion. I just wouldn't deal with the corporate structure of it, and maybe Nathan was the same. It was the wrong moment at the wrong time. I don't think he was given a chance, if I'm honest. I think the fans had turned against him before he started, which doesn't help.
You sacked him after 95 days?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you how long it was, but yeah, I don't think it worked.
Did you tell him the good news?
I don't think we can get into that kind of stuff, sadly, but I think it didn't work from the beginning. I don't think the relationships gelled inside the club and outside the club, and that made it difficult. But again, as I said about Ralph, I've never seen anything but Nathan working hard in his office all day, all night, doing the best he can. And I think it turns on those key moments. We had a couple of moments where he won games and everything felt great. We had a couple of moments where, we hit a post and we didn't win that game and things went backwards. So it was a difficult moment. It's nothing I can really get into, but, it's tough for him mostly, but it was a difficult time for the club, I think.
I mean, it's fine margins, isn't it, Simon? You did the same at Palace. It either works and it works well and you go with it, and everybody's happy with what that brings, or if it goes against you, you've got a decision to make.
Well, yeah, it's easy to make decisions. It's much more difficult to make the right ones. I didn't think it was a great appointment. I mean, Martin and I have had this conversation, and I know that there was lots of reasons behind the appointment, but I looked at Nathan Jones and the statistics. This is where you get the balance between statistics, interviewing someone, gut feel, and judgment call. And I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised at the outcome, because it's one thing being able to, and his own analysis of his own career is slightly warped and deluded, because if you take it into the Stoke equation, you're not going to get a worse win record than you got at Stoke. And one thing is being able to do it at Luton, at that time in Luton's evolution. It's another thing landing on the stage in the Premier League, where there's a whole new set of rules, the manner in which you communicate. You've got a whole different load of other component parts in the conversation that you can't price into your thinking in terms of what you might have experienced in the Championship. When you get into the Premier League, you've got Premier League footballers that have got highfalutin opinions of themselves, what they will listen to, what they won't listen to. And managers can walk in a dressing room and they're going to have the reputation of being a £1 million footballer like Trevor Francis was. They can open their mouth, and the first thing that comes out of their mouth, their reputation will be gone, and the players will take their view. And I think Nathan Jones fell into that category. He may well have been the hardest working person that slept at the training ground dawn till dusk. That doesn't come into the equation when you're a busy fool. You've got to be able to adapt to the landscape that you're in. It's very easy from the outside in, but I understand the reasons why the appointment was made, but I felt it was an appointment fraught with an outcome, not as quickly as it happened, but I didn't think it'd get them out of relegation trouble, and I didn't think it'd be the ultimate solution for them.
And then you flirted with the idea of Jesse Marsch who you approached,
Yep.
but then who turned you down. Jesse Marsch says this.
I was in Southampton. I was ready to go.
Yeah.
I was ready to go to work the next day. And then the negotiation got delayed a couple days. And what they had said is that they needed to get aligned from a board perspective, which that sometimes can happen. And I dealt with that in Leeds a little bit with the 49ers and different time zones and continents. And in that time that they delayed, what I saw was a lack of vision of what the future was going to be. And that ultimately scared me away. I will also be honest, like I said, I was heartbroken from leaving Leeds. And I also just emotionally from Leeds was still in a very unstable, I think best way to describe situation, because the emotion, and by the way, the second match was back at Ellen Road.
No fear factor about potentially being associated with two sides that might get relegated for you
No,
and your
no,
reputation?
it was more, again, my data team did research on Southampton. I was ready to go. I was ready to sign on the dotted line 2 days before I said no. And I knew that they had a 95% chance of being relegated at that time, so it wasn't about that.
So that was Jesse Marsch. What's your view of what he's saying, Martin? You guys didn't have any vision.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's exactly what he's saying, but let me go back to the first question, then I'll come to that. So I think Ralph Hasenhüttl I worked with for a long time, Nathan not so long. He told me two things about footballers, which I will share with you. So one was, he said, the first time when you take over a club, the first time you go on the pitch, the first training session, if you don't get that right, you're dead. As Simon says, and the players lose respect for you, and it's backhill from there. And the second one, he said, he used this language of, you need proof points. So I always used to use the analogy of, if you said to fullbacks, like, I want you for 90 minutes to run up and down the touchline, and they're looking at you going, why are you doing that? And you win the game 5-0, then he would say to me, well, they now believe me and they're going to keep running in where I want them to run. If you lose 5-0, they go, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing, and they start coming in, right? And I think where it went wrong for Nathan was that, which is he said, we were going to do this. And actually the players really bought into it and thought, this is exciting, it's different, but we just didn't get the results, and then they start losing belief. It then takes you to the Jesse story. So I felt, following Nathan, that the right thing to do was to go back to who we were, and go back to our pressing style, our Red Bull style, which obviously Jesse came from. And we were also in a time critical, I'm not sure it was 95% Jesse, but it wasn't good. And we needed to do something instantly. And I felt, having met Jesse a few times, that he would have that instant impact. Whether or not he'd be the right person to manage a club for 5 years was not the point. He would come in on day one, overly positive, the American attitude of, I can get this done. There was no language in Jesse's language with me that he couldn't get it done. He could go in on day one and say, this is how we're going to play, this is how we're going to change. And I felt he'd be brilliant for the atmosphere. And that's why we made that decision. I think what Jesse saw was, what I mentioned before, was that the club was starting to go in different directions. And I think he started to look beyond that season and thought, I don't know whether next season, if I get this done, you'll be here, I'll be here, we'll be going in the same direction. And I think at the time that was disappointing to me, but I understood it.
So you offered him it and he turned it down?
Yeah. I mean, he
How did you feel about that?
Well, fine, because I mean, again, without going too much, I think he spoke to Simon about it the other day. He was there. I spent 2 days with him going through the planning. He was ready to go. And then at the last minute, he decided it wasn't the right opportunity for him. He dealt with it in a very good way. It was disappointing for us because we were 5 days
You're
into
ready
it.
to go.
But, it is what it is.
Did he put any more meat in the bones to you, Simon?
Listen to the podcast. I think what the point he was making was that he had complete CEO buy-in, and I don't think he got quite the same buy-in from the ownership. That didn't give him the confidence to feel that this was a longer-term project for him. That was my taking. That's not what he specifically said, but that was my reading between the lines. That the CEO was advocating very strong and very committed to wanting him in the business, and that was going to be enough to get him across the line into the business. But the vision beyond that from the owner perhaps was slightly different, and that made him have second thoughts.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that the ownership and wanted to change direction. Jason Wilcox was coming in, they wanted to go in a different direction, and that's their thing, and it's worked.
Okay.
And I think Jesse probably felt that, whereas the rest of us were trying to just keep going along that season, I think.
We're going to bring it more up to date after the break that's coming up. Toby's coming in with the 12:30 headlines, Martin. Chance for a cup of tea or coffee. But you don't have tea or coffee.
I do
Why?
not know. Well, I don't drink them because I was a hyperactive child, and my parents would always stop me going outside till they had their coffee. So I made a commitment to life that I would never have a cup of coffee in my life, so I didn't waste time. Thank you for asking me live on air.
You've never had one.
I've never had one.
I like it.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.